Hey Internet, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a whole lot of movie videos and TV show videos and maybe some other stuff too. For this first video though, I wanted to do something, a deep dive of sorts on Star Wars The Last Jedi, because I really like Star Wars, and I also really like The Last Jedi, but holy shit, this is interesting. Yeah, and I know this video is about 2 months late, but what can I say, editing takes time, and I'm new at this, so let's do it. Alright, let's run through some of the problems of this movie, because there are quite a few. The pacing of the film is not that great, especially in the middle. It has a pretty big lull, mostly to do with the Canto Bight or Casino Planet storyline, which is overall pretty poorly done. The ideas in it and the setting itself are pretty neat, but the execution is just pretty poor. Finn and Rose as a romance. Yeah, this doesn't work at all. If you want to do a romance storyline, there's nothing wrong with that. You have a lot of good examples. You got this one, and this one, and not this one. But yeah, if you want to do a romance, you have to actually do a romance. You can't just have two people on screen together all movie, and then at the end just have them kiss. Like, that comes out of nowhere, and it confuses people. Also, relating to the Casino Planet storyline, Benicio del Toro's character, he should have just been the guy they were going there to find instead of a guy they meet in a prison cell. Like, it was a pretty convoluted story arc. They get a parking ticket and get arrested and then meet him in the jail cell by happenstance. It's a little odd. And one last thing, the humor in the movie, it didn't bother me, but I can understand why it did bother some people. It doesn't necessarily feel like Star Wars humor, if you will. So it's not a problem for me, but I get it. So Luke's a lot different in this movie, and a lot of people are taking that as a really bad thing. But before I dive into this deeply, I want to point out that most people don't stay the exact same for 30 years. I mean, sure, sometimes they do, like maybe your high school quarterback never emotionally graduated high school, and he's still telling that one story about that awesome pass he made. But most people aren't like that. Most people kind of move on and grow up and change. So let's start with him and Kylo Ren, because all other changes to Luke's character sort of derive from this one moment and decision. And a lot of people are saying that Luke considering killing his nephew is something that he would never do. And I want to point out before evaluating that Luke didn't actually try to kill his nephew. He thought about it for a second and then regretted it. And that's not the same thing. To test this, how about this? Next time your boss tells you to do something for work, don't do it. Then when they come back and ask for it, tell them, well, boss, I thought about doing it. And that's just the same, right? No, you're going to get fired. So, Luke didn't actually do anything. And even if he did, Luke has a history of making really rash decisions and then having bad consequences.
You'll find I'm full of surprises.
So, it's not totally inconsistent with his character. And also remember in Return of the Jedi, when he went to go redeem Vader at the end, all it took was Vader issuing a vague threat about turning Luke's sister that made him snap and try to kill him.
I will not fight you.
If you will not turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will.
So, also not super inconsistent there. But regardless of me being able to justify all of this from a story perspective, Luke still fucked up, and there were a lot of consequences for him doing so. And because he turned his nephew dark on accident and then got all of his students killed, he hates himself. And it makes sense that he would. It also, his hesitation to train Rey also makes sense, because the last time he tried to train someone, especially with a lot of power, he screwed it up and they turned evil. Now there's a huge war going on that is pretty much his fault. So Luke's state of mind in this movie makes sense when you take all of that into account. And at this point, you may be thinking to yourselves, well, then don't write him that way. Just write him being a teacher of a new generation of Jedi, like it was implied at the end of Return of the Jedi he was going to become. And my response to that would be, well, then why tell this story at all? His story is complete. His arc was done at the end of Return of the Jedi. That was the end of his adventure, and now we're in someone else's adventure, of which Luke is a part. Luke being the accidental catalyst for Ben Solo's turn to the dark side and becoming Kylo Ren is interesting for Kylo Ren's character, and also adds a new layer to Luke. Luke being resistant to teaching Rey adds a new layer to her storyline, and also shows us what kind of mentor Luke is, for both of them. For this new story, that's what we need. We don't need Luke just being Luke again, because we've seen it for 3 movies. In addition to all of this, Luke not being the guy we remember is essential to his character's state and growth throughout this entire movie. I feel like the movie explained this pretty clearly, but apparently not, so I'm just going to walk through it all right now. At the start, after Rey asks for his help, Luke responds by saying, "What, you think I'm going to walk out and face down the entire First Order by myself holding a laser sword?" But that's a setup for something that comes later. And then later in the movie, Rey tells Luke that the galaxy might need a legend, she needs someone to show her place and all of this stuff. To which he rejects because he sees his legend as being fraudulent. Also set up for later in the movie. And then when he's talking to Yoda, he says that he cannot be what she needs him to be. The things that I just discussed. And then so at the end of the movie, when he shows up and embraces himself as a legend, faces down the entire First Order with a laser sword, then that is earned. That is called an arc. He went from one state at the beginning of the movie to another state at the end. And as for him not being physically present for the final confrontation of this movie, just a couple quick things on that. One, he can't get there. The movie shows us his ship underwater. It's probably been there for a while. Probably doesn't work very well anymore, if at all. 2, he doesn't believe that he can physically be what he needs to be to accomplish his goal in this scenario. So he projects himself in a younger, more legendary form. Just look at what he's holding. He's holding his original lightsaber. He's wearing clothes that look like his clothes in Return of the Jedi. He's projecting his best self across the galaxy to inspire hope. Seeing an old man in like little robes wouldn't accomplish that. And he's trying to mess with his nephew's head too. So yeah. And just one last thing about Luke. After watching The Force Awakens, how did you expect anything different from his character going into this movie? I mean, what do we know that happened in the interim? We know his nephew turned against him and killed all of his students and burned his temple down, and that we know that Luke went into self-imposed exile, maybe looking for a Jedi temple. And then we see him on an island alone, standing over a cliff. So what, do you think he just found like the ultimate place to find power converters but crashed his car so he can't get back anymore, and he's just like waiting for someone to come pick him up? Because to me, that's not what it seemed like. It seemed like he put himself there so he would not be found or, couldn't hurt anybody else. I mean, that makes sense to me. Nothing changes by the end of the movie, and the characters always fail. As for the first one of those, are you shitting me? Everything changes. At the beginning of the movie, the Resistance is in kind of bad shape. By the end of it, they have, 40 people in one ship? That's a lot of change. And also the Supreme Leader of the First Order is dead and replaced by a maniac. So that's another change, too. And on to the second thing, the characters always fail. Congratulations, you found the theme of the movie. That's the point, is experiencing failure and then either learning from it or changing, or not. So let's break this down character by character. Poe starts the movie as an arrogant pilot who thinks the solution to everything is jumping in his cockpit and blowing stuff up. In that mindset, he fails and almost gets his entire army and group of friends killed. By the end of the movie, he realizes that there's something to be said for living to fight another day and leads them to safety in the end. Rey, she's really naive, and she fails to turn Ben Solo back to the light side and fails to bring Luke back to the Resistance to help the fight. In doing so, she learns that she has to step up herself and be a beacon of hope on her own and not look to others to do so. Kylo Ren, he failed by killing his father. It was the wrong choice. He then seemed to be learning. He killed Supreme Leader Snoke, and then, at the end, he doubles down on being an asshole and his rage, and in doing so, loses the Resistance when he could have snuffed them out in one day. So yeah, failure is the central theme of this movie. And if you weren't picking up on that on your own, Yoda tells you, when he's talking to Luke on the island, He literally looks to him and says, the greatest teacher failure is. Now, that was for Luke, but it was also for us, because, sometimes you just gotta have a character straight up tell you what's going on, I suppose. Alright, on to Rey's parents. They're nobody, and that pissed a lot of people off. Yeah, so the way I think about this is Rian Johnson had a choice to make when writing this movie. He could either write the reveal to serve us as fans, or write it to serve the character of Rey and her story. And he chose to do the latter, which I think is the better choice, because he's telling a story, he's not just doing something for fans. And to those of you who are saying that it's a complete left turn from The Force Awakens, it's actually kind of set up that her parents are nobody and don't really matter in this part right here.
You already know the truth. Whomever you're waiting for on Jakku, they're never coming back. But there's someone who still could.
Having her parents be nobody does actually a whole lot of growth for her character. I was in the camp that thought it'd be pretty neat if she was related to Obi-Wan, but her hearing that news from Kylo Ren instead of her parents being nobody, she doesn't know who Obi-Wan is. That would be a reveal that only serves me. It doesn't forward the story or her character growth. And yeah, they could have gone a different direction, had her be Han's kid or Luke's kid, and that would have been okay, I guess, but I think what they did is actually pretty powerful in the end. Let's talk about Snoke for a little bit. I understand that a lot of people are pissed that he gets killed in this movie and ends up having no backstory, but I want to ask you to remember back to Return of the Jedi. What did we actually know about the Emperor at that point? Because if you remember, we didn't even know his name in that movie. All we know about him is that he's really a horrible prick who shoots lightning out of his hands and he dies because he wasn't paying attention to what was going on around him. Snoke is kind of the same. He's a real prick, he shoots lightning out of his hands, and he dies because he's not able to read a room properly. And I get why that's a little annoying to some people, but in the way that the story and the reveal about Rey's parents exists to serve her and her character's journey, Supreme Leader Snoke is there only in service of Kylo Ren's journey and growth. He's not important in and of himself, he's important for the growth of Kylo Ren. And that's really why he's there. Having a big reveal about his backstory would detract from the main point of the scene and this movie. This movie reveals that Lucasfilm did not plan out the trilogy ahead of time. Because Star Wars has always been super planned out.
My sister has it. Yes. It's you, Leia.
I know. Somehow, I've always known.
Oh, here's a fun fact. You made out with your sister!
Alright, let's talk about Leia in space for a minute, and I'll give you guys a point here because, the scene doesn't really work as I think they intended it to. But the central idea behind it, I think, is actually alright. Visually, Leia reaching out her hand and floating back to her spaceship is pretty goofy, and it doesn't work. But I think Leia being able to reach out to the Force in times of need is well enough established in the previous movies. She reaches out to Luke in Empire. She feels that he's still alive in Return of the Jedi, and she feels Han die in Force Awakens. So it stands to reason that maybe when she's in dire need of it, the Force will help her survive. And as for her not freezing to death when she's out there, yeah, initially that seems really sort of fake and weird, but look back to Empire Strikes Back when she and Han are on the run from the Empire and they go into that asteroid. They walk out of the ship with just little breathing masks on, nothing to keep them warm or anything. And yes, it turns out that they're inside the stomach of a giant space worm, so maybe it's a little warmer, but the fact that they even went outside without protective gear implies that they would be okay in space without it. So maybe space just isn't as cold in Star Wars, I don't know, but if you got a problem with this, you had to have a problem with the one in Empire, too. And also, I'm just going to throw in here a lot of people bitching about bombs dropping in space at the beginning of this movie. I also reference this same sequence in Empire where TIE bombers are bombing the asteroid in space. So, yeah, same thing. Okay. Guys, we need to have a talk now. A lot of people out there are complaining, saying this movie is a social justice warrior mess and proves that Lucasfilm hates men and white people. What the fuck? So I understand that Kathleen Kennedy obsessively looking for a female director for Star Wars seems a little weird considering how many guys want the job, but diversity is a good thing, people. And Star Wars has always been for everybody. So having a Guatemalan guy, a black guy, and a female in the lead, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with male protagonists either, but we've had a lot of them. We can have something different for a little while. And I've also seen people saying out there that Disney and Lucasfilm are neglecting the core fan base of Star Wars that is mostly male. You fucking shitting me? You can't enjoy something unless the protagonist looks and acts just like you. So were Terminator and Alien just unwatchable back in the day because Ripley and Sarah Connor were women? Like, oh man, they're not dudes, so I really just can't relate to them. I can't get into this movie at all. What are you? No, it's dumb. And a lot of this criticism is leveled specifically at Laura Dern's character of Vice Admiral Holdo, saying that she is a man-hating feminist. It's like, okay, if this character were unchanged in every way, except you had, I don't know, Clive Owen playing this character, I'm betting you people wouldn't have had a fucking problem with it. Because there's nothing in this character's actions or dialogue that suggests that she hates men. It's just that she's a woman. I don't know why you're picking on this so much. And also, she gets one of the coolest scenes in the movie, and if you really have a fucking problem with her, she dies. So, get over it. So in my mind, there are two ways of satisfying an audience if you're a creator working on a movie. You either give them what they know they want, or you give them what they don't yet know they want. In my opinion, The Force Awakens gave most of us Star Wars fans what we knew we wanted. And I really enjoyed it, but it did get a lot of flack for essentially being a, quote, remake of New Hope. I think there was enough different in it for me, but, a lot of people did not think that way. And I think The Last Jedi attempts to give us what we don't yet know we want. And in my opinion, it mostly succeeded. Obviously, that is not true for everybody else. I didn't know I wanted to see about a movie about heroes screwing up and losing almost everything, so they have to learn from it in the next movie. But it turns out, I guess I kind of did. I'll also guess that people didn't know they wanted Vader to be Luke's dad. But that's ended up going down as one of the greatest plot twists in cinematic history. So, and I could be wrong about this, but I remember reading that when it came out, The Empire Strikes Back wasn't universally loved. It got a lot of mixed reviews, and a lot of people were really unsatisfied when they left the theater, but now it's considered by many to be the franchise's best film, and one of the best films in general. Now, I'm not saying The Last Jedi is as good as Empire. It's not. But maybe some of the things you hate most about it right now will end up being some of the things you love and respect about it 10 years from now. Or, maybe not. And one last thing, I just wanted to go over a quick couple changes that I would have made to the movie that I think would have improved it just a little bit. First of all, I would have extended the timeline of the thing. It only lasts about 3 days, I think, in real-world time, and now I understand that having a line saying the fleet only has 3 weeks of fuel left doesn't really sound that epic or urgent, but I think it would have helped with a lot of the sort of pace problems that people have with this movie. And the last thing is, at the very end, when you see the stable kids sort of talking about Luke facing down the First Order, that's a cool idea. I would have done it just a little bit differently. You remember that scene from Finding Nemo where the story of how Marlin's coming for his kid is being passed from fish to bird to whatever, and it's just being passed along and the story is growing as it goes? I would have done the same sort of sequence for the end of this movie and then maybe end with the stable kids. Just a, quick little thought I had. But hey, in the end, even after me talking this long, maybe one of the things I talked about still breaks the movie for you, or maybe it was something else I didn't discuss that breaks the movie for you. And that's okay. Not everybody's going to like the same stuff. But just think about it this way. If you just love the original Star Wars, it's always going to be there. And if you love the prequels, they're always going to be there. The nice thing about the way Star Wars is so far is each trilogy is so separate from the last that you can sort of treat them as self-contained little things. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, it really helped me out if you could subscribe, like, or mainly share with other people who might like it. I'm really looking forward to doing more videos like this in the future. So see you next time.